Vietnam War was a protracted and devastating conflict that took place from 1955 to 1975, primarily in Vietnam, but also in neighboring countries like Laos and Cambodia. It was a significant event in the Cold War era, pitting the communist forces of North Vietnam and the Viet Cong against the anti-communist forces of South Vietnam, supported by the United States and other allies.
Background and causes. The roots of the Vietnam War can be traced back to the end of World War II and the decolonization of Southeast Asia. Vietnam, then part of French Indochina, sought independence from colonial rule. The First Indochina War, 1946 to 1954, saw Vietnamese communist forces, led by Ho Chi Minh, fighting against the French. The war ended with the Geneva Accords in 1954, which temporarily divided Vietnam at the 17th parallel. The North was controlled by the Communist Democratic Republic of Vietnam, DRV, led by Ho Chi Minh, and the South by the Anti-Communist Republic of Vietnam, supported by the United States. Tensions between the North and South quickly escalated, with the North aiming to reunify the country under communist rule and the South resisting, with the support of the U.S. The U.S. involvement was driven by the Cold War policy of containment, which sought to prevent the spread of communism worldwide.
Major events of the war. U.S. involvement and escalation. The U.S. began providing economic and military aid to South Vietnam in the 1950s. However, after the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964, where North Vietnamese forces allegedly attacked U.S. ships, the U.S. Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. This gave President Lyndon B. Johnson broad powers to escalate U.S. military involvement, leading to the deployment of large numbers of U.S. troops. The U.S. adopted a strategy of heavy aerial bombardment and ground operations to weaken the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces. The conflict intensified, with U.S. troop numbers peaking at over 500,000 in the late 1960s.
The Tet Offensive, 1968. A major turning point in the war, the Tet Offensive was a coordinated series of attacks by the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces across South Vietnam during the Tet holiday. Although militarily repelled, the offensive shocked the US public and media, leading to increased anti-war sentiment and questioning of US policy in Vietnam. Vietnamization and US withdrawal. Under President Richard Nixon, the US pursued a policy of Vietnamization, which aimed to gradually withdraw US troops and transfer combat responsibilities to South Vietnamese forces. Despite this, the fighting continued, and peace talks in Paris dragged on. In 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, leading to a ceasefire and the withdrawal of US troops. However, the war between North and South Vietnam continued.
The fall of Saigon, 1975. Despite continued US aid, South Vietnam struggled to hold off those Vietnamese forces. In April 1975, North Vietnamese troops captured Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, marking the end of the war. Vietnam was reunified under communist control. Consequences and impact. Human cost. The Vietnam War was one of the most devastating conflicts of the 20th century, with millions of Vietnamese civilians and soldiers killed. The war also took a heavy toll on U.S. forces, with over 58,000 American soldiers killed and many more wounded or psychologically scarred. Social and political impact. The war deeply divided American society, leading to widespread protests, particularly among the younger generation. The anti-war movement played a significant role in shaping U.S. domestic policies and attitudes toward military interventions.
The war also eroded trust in the U.S. government, particularly after the release of the Pentagon Papers, which revealed that successive administrations had misled the public about the war's progress and prospects.
Regional and global impact. In Vietnam, the war left the country devastated, with massive destruction of infrastructure, landscapes, and lives. The reunified Vietnam faced years of economic hardship and international isolation. The war also had a significant impact on neighboring countries, particularly Cambodia and Laos, where it contributed to the rise of the Khmer Rouge and other conflicts.
Legacy. The Vietnam War remains a powerful symbol of the limits of military power and the complexities of ideological conflicts. It has been extensively studied, debated, and portrayed in literature, film, and popular culture. The war also led to changes in US military and foreign policy, including the War Powers Act of 1973, which sought to limit the president's ability to commit US forces to conflicts without congressional approval.
In summary, the Vietnam War was a complex and tragic conflict with profound consequences for Vietnam, the United States, and the world. It serves as a poignant reminder of the costs of war and the challenges of resolving deep-seated political and ideological differences. Thank you for watching the video, The Vietnam War, provided by History and Current Events. This is Sarah, Lily, Gina, Brian, and Tony have contributed so far as narrators. Thank you.